ever help setting the table? Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So, in our reading today, we hear that God set the table for us, all right? And one of the ways that we get to help out, one of the ways that we get to participate as church is helping to set the table. So I want you guys to come with me here. Come on, join me. Oh, we're going this way. We're going this way. Yeah, come on. Come on. Yeah, you're good. Luca, you can come on up. All right. Come on, brother. You're good. You're making your way in the world today. Can you make room? Can Luca come up with you? All right, Luca, come on up. All right. So, what do we got here? What is this? Anybody know what this is? You don't remember? Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's okay, because a lot of people out there, if I ask them, they won't know either. All right. So, with this is the altar. All right? And this is our table. And we serve a very special meal off of our table here. Do you know what meal we serve over there? I think you do, because that's all right. I'll catch you up on that one later. We serve communion. We serve the bread and the wine and the grape juice, right? And that is God's way of telling us. That is God's way of telling us that God loves us very much, all right? And we share meals with people that we love, people that we care about. So do you guys ever use napkins when you eat? Yeah. Okay, so these are basically napkins, all right? And we use those for the same thing. We clean off the cup. So we lay that there. And the first thing I do, I learned from Pastor Herb, all right? And it makes things easier if you just fold this whole thing up on top of it, and you can just lift the whole thing off, all right? We lift this off, lift this off, lift this off. What do these look like? What do you think this looks like? A cup. Yeah, it looks like a cup, right? And this is what we serve Jesus' blood out of, all right, the wine, all right? And this is the way Jesus tells us that he loves us very much. What does this look like? What do you put your food on when you... A plate, right, yeah. This is a plate, all right? And we serve the bread out of this, all right? And that is another way that God tells us that he loves us. All right, so who is able to have dinner with us up here? Anybody? All people, right? Yeah, all people, because God loves everyone. All right? So I want to say thank you guys because you helped me set the table for today. All right? And I'll see you guys at communion. Sound like a plan? All right, Mr. Luca, ready? Oh, Andrew's got you. All right. There you go. Thanks, God. All right. We love you guys. God loves you. They love you.
Just drive on in. Hitchhiking to get out. Where are we going here? Or where are we?
We're going into Ohiopyle. We're on one of the back roads. I figured you got to see the main road in yesterday, so I figured I'd bring us a different way.
So we're not on the same road.
Nope, not on the same road. But we're gonna pop out on the same road here in a second. Yeah. This is I don't even know what the name of this road is, to be honest. I just know where it takes us.
Wasn't that just past Hollow Lick? Or Lick Hollow?
Lick Hollow.
That's some kind of name.
Yeah, it's got a great little hiking trail in there up to a little oversea point. That's pretty cool. And so we're coming out onto 381, which is the main road between Route 40 and then Ohiopyle.
There's a Meadow Run Community Church.
Meadow Run is this little creek that trout fishermen love and kayakers love. And we're going to see a section of it. One of the prettiest sections. We won't hike into the one unless we have time, but we'll take a look at the slides. I want to see how many people are there, though, because
You can get a kayak onto a creek?
Oh yeah. There's whole delineations of creeking too. There's steep creeking, there's creeking, there's know, low volume, high volume creeks, and yeah,
Are there secret creeks too?
there are some secret creeks, but for the most part, they're no. I mean, really, creeks keep themselves secret by their difficulty. You have to really want to, like I don't know if your guide pointed out to you yesterday, Drake's Creek.
Yes, he did.
Drake's is no joke. Drake's is a full-on. Very few people run it because very few people can. And so, you know, that's more what, and then you have to be ready when the water's there. And then, you know, if you really have a creek that you want to do, you go in when it's dry and clean out the wood. So there's this whole, almost a worshiping process, you know, to the experience. And this is this creek, Meadow, with the exception of the last part of it, is pretty mild. It's a class 3 plus sort of deal, except for the last rapid that we'll take a look at. It's a natural water slide, and it's real pretty. And people in the summertime slide down it on their butts, which I don't know how more people don't get killed. That's neither here nor there.
How am I going to thank you for this road?
I'm just happy you're here, Joe.
Have you read Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road? You know that novel?
I know Cormac McCarthy. I don't think I read The Road, though. I think I read... Which one did I read by him?
Blood Meridian.
Blood Meridian. Yeah.
The Road is...
Road's pretty bleak, isn't it?
Yeah, I just heard a long conversation on Facebook with a lot of writers talking about that aspect of The Road. I read it as a love story, and between a father and son. And I just, I was halfway through it, and I bought Tim a copy, and we had a cup of coffee in the Fremont district, and I was going to El Salvador that day, and so we had that book together. So I recommend it as a love story.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend it as, say, the next book you read.
Okay, you got it.
And this is where you took us yesterday. Tell me whatever you can about that whitewater and
Ohiopyle, and I'm gonna butcher this. I want to say, and we'll go in the visitor center down here because they just built it and it's real nice. And actually, they did a good job of making it an educational piece. But this is the boater parking lot. This is where if you're gonna kayak, you're gonna park. So this is where we're gonna park because this is the full experience. This river was first run by George Washington. He had rafts made and floated down it. And of course, they didn't run the falls or anything. But
that's why his name came up on that raft yesterday, huh?
Yeah, George Washington. Yeah, they actually, one of my park rangers, I don't know if he'll be here today, he's a friend of mine, but he actually had this dream of a project, a program where they would build a raft like what George Washington would have built. And you follow that up and there's a big tongue of water coming down, and that's your launching ramp. Gun it down that thing and then take one last stroke and you kind of ski jump off of it. My bad, but yeah,
okay.
It's right there, that spot.
So, right there.
Yeah. Right.
Now,
Right in
okay.
that little horseshoe spot.
Yeah, I got the horseshoe spot. Now it's right in the center of the viewfinder. Okay.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And the whole thing is about an 18-foot drop.
Oh my God.
the real draw for this area is, for whitewater at least, is the loop. And that's because we put in right here, and then you get to run some of the best whitewater. And then you take right back out and you carry your boat. And you put right back on.
Great. How far do you have to carry your boat?
Maybe half a mile, maybe a third of a mile. So it's not bad at all. But I mean, almost nowhere else in the world would you have natural whitewater where you can just run it over and over and over again. It's almost like a treadmill.
Okay, wow.
But then we put in down here at Ramcat, and then we followed the river all the way down to here to the takeout.
Wow.
So we got a good 10 miles in yesterday, 11 miles.
Yeah.
So I want you to think for a moment. I want you to think about someone in your life who was a good teacher. Who in your life was a good teacher? Would anyone be willing to share who it was that popped into your mind when I said it? Who was a good teacher from your life? Parents. Mother? Parents? Herb. Yeah, we mentioned him. He taught me a lot. Grandmother. Who else?
I think sometimes children.
Children. It's true. Yeah, Kat. Cousin. All right. And I'm not fishing for anything. I'm just curious who in your life has been a good teacher. Yeah, Kate.
The EMTs and paramedics I work with.
The EMT and the paramedics. Okay, so sometimes people we work with or volunteer with teach us things. Grade school teacher. Which one?
6th grade.
All right, yeah, because you always remember that, you know. I can tell you.
College instructors.
College instructors. All right.
Pastor Jim.
Here's your 20. So for a little harder question, what was it about that person that made them a good teacher? What was it that connected for you? Patience. Oh, all right. So if you didn't get it the first time, or the second, or the third bounce.
I think trust.
Trust. Can you say more about that, Brian?
Well, you get the trust that that person knows what they're talking about before you can believe that they're credible.
Okay, so you needed to kind of know that they were credible, that they cared about you, that they cared about what they were teaching you, that they knew what they were doing. All right. Calmness. All right. So being able to explain things in difficult situations in a calm manner. Experience. Okay, so we appreciate sometimes when people have experiences that they can share with us, that they can give to us. And again, this is a great list. I'm just curious. Anything else people want to share? I don't want to cut anybody off. Sacrifice. Can you say a little more about that, Michael?
How they would give up to take care of you. They would give up certain items to make sure that you had.
Okay. So there was an element of servanthood.
Right.
Sacrifice. Care. For me, and most of these fall into the categories you shared. For me, the mark of a good teacher, my parents, in school, in church, on the river, wherever, was if the teacher could show me how that information, how that skill applied to real life. Many of you know that I was not very good at math. Many of you know that I'm still not very good at math. And I can still remember the precise moment when I decided that math was not for me. I came into my Algebra 2 class and the teacher announced that we were going to be learning about imaginary numbers. And I wanted to know why. I was like, why about these if they're imaginary. And I'm sure that there are good reasons for learning about algebra and math, but my teacher at that moment wasn't able to give me a good example of how I might need these math skills later, except for to learn more math down the road. I bring up teachers in light of our gospel lesson from John this morning. And I wonder if it is tempting sometimes to read and understand Jesus' words about sheep and shepherds as only metaphors, as only ideas about heaven and salvation. I worry that we read it this way, that we hear this teaching only pointing to a distant time, a distant future. And while it isn't wrong to read Jesus' words this way, I wonder if we risk missing out on the full impact and benefit of Easter morning on our lives here, now, right today. And I think we can shift our thinking about this teaching by asking one simple question. Who is Jesus talking to? The problem with the Gospel of John is that every chunk of the story tends to be really, really, really long. And since church can only be about an hour long, right, Jason? All right. Since it can only be about an hour long, we are limited to how much we can hear. For example, Jesus' teaching about being the Good Shepherd. This is in response to an already long story about Jesus, about the man born blind and the religious authorities. And you remember, there was this man who was born blind. Jesus heals him on the Sabbath. The man gets thrown out of his church and cut off from his community because the authorities didn't approve how and when Jesus healed this man. Then Jesus tracks the man down who has been cut off from family and friends and invites him into a new community. And what we hear today in John 10 is Jesus teaching and talking to the man and the church leaders about that situation. This is why I find Jesus compelling as a teacher. He doesn't tell us stuff that might help us someday, but he grounds his examples and his actions in concrete examples and situations. A person was suffering, so Jesus takes action to alleviate that suffering. The person who is healed is retaliated against by his community, so Jesus takes action to care for, restore, and welcome the one who is ostracized and oppressed. Jesus unites the gospel of God's love for all people with what is going on right here, right now. And this is a recurring pattern throughout Jesus' ministry. Teaching flows out of concrete acts of loving kindness and mercy. You remember that before Jesus teaches a Samaritan woman about God's universal love for all people, he asks her for a drink of water. A very action that crosses gender, ethnic, and social boundaries. Before Jesus explains how he's the bread of life, he first feeds the crowd with a real meal of bread and fish. Before Jesus teaches his disciples about serving others at the Last Supper, he takes on the role of a servant, gets down on his hands and knees, and washes their feet. What if this is the way of teaching that our neighbors, our communities, our world has been waiting for? A God who cares about physical, emotional, and spiritual suffering, and acts to care for and be in solidarity with those who are hurting. So this is where Jesus is like. This is where Easter morning and the empty tomb is pushing the Christian church, pushing you and pushing me. We are called to be kingdom bringers, to live into the resurrection, here and now, with concrete actions of service and solidarity that are followed up by teachings about God's love and grace. I had kind of a cool experience a couple weeks ago. I got to talk to a member of our church who was sharing about how he'd become very passionate about caring for those in need in our community. And he said, yeah, I've been volunteering here and doing this and giving here and whatnot. He said, something had changed in my life. He said, something was pushing me to act and live differently and more generously. And he wasn't quite sure what was generating that change, and he kind of wondered aloud if it was age, if it was marriage, if it was fatherhood. And it took me a few days before another possibility for his change hit me. And I caught him for a moment on a Sunday, and I said, it could be that you got baptized, right? God is working in you for the sake of this world. This is something that I've always loved about being a Christian who also happens to be a Lutheran. Salvation is not knowledge. It is a new way of existing, a new way of being, a new way of living. Wherever the Lutheran Church has gone, it has opened medical clinics, brought clean water, hospitals, schools, colleges, adoption agencies, and other life-bringing services. The shirts that you had printed say it loud and clear, the ones that say St. Peter's Lutheran, God's work, our hands. We are living into the reality of Easter, loving others around us as Christ first loved us. This is why you all showed up on a Saturday morning to help plant and build a garden, to bring healthy food into a neighborhood that lacks access to fresh fruit, access to fresh vegetables. This is why you cook meals, why you mentor, why you support our leadership program that gives local youth healthy recreation activities in the midst of our area that is suffering from such trouble with addiction. This is why you donate to the ELCA World Hunger. Recently, through ELCA World Hunger, we were able to rebuild 600 homes in Central African Republic after a killer drought and an awful civil war. These are a few examples of the concrete example of God's love being lived out by our local and by our national church. We live this way, giving, sacrificing, and serving because Jesus first showed us how. And we know that we cannot hear the gospel if we cannot see the gospel. So in closing, I want to invite you. If one of your friends, if one of your classmates, co-workers, or family members ever asks you why you go to church, resist the temptation of trying to tell them. Instead, invite them. Invite them to serve with you. Help serve a meal at Salvation Army. Go on a summer mission trip with our youth down to Charleston, West Virginia. Or come out and water the garden. Who knows? They might just encounter the risen Christ. He is risen? He is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
That they were talking about, that we were talking about when we were looking at the falls, where at much lower water, but where you want to.
You've never shown your mother that picture, have you?
I don't know if I told her around the falls or not. But
You've never shown her that picture?
No, she doesn't need to know.
This is where Eric and I, when we were first dating,